Well, we've heard policy makers, we've heard big industry, and now we have entrepreneurs who are rewriting the India story, as it were. And all the people on this panel could have been on an H-1B visa somewhere in America. But they are right here with us, and they have built valuable businesses in the country. They are fostering the spirit of entrepreneurship and innovation. Let me begin with you, Ritesh. We've seen a slew of reforms that have been directed specifically towards ease of doing business. And we have government coming out and talking that the startup ecosystem needs to innovate more. You all are not thinking out of the box, and you're only building what are being considered as safe businesses. So with the reform push that we are seeing, do you feel that there is now a more conducive ecosystem for encouraging innovation?
No, first of all, very excited to be here, Shweta. I think these are two separate things. When we talk about the GST reforms, while there's a lot of magic about it, but at the same time, there are a lot of industries that have not been covered well. And I'll give you an example. You talk about the hotel industry, which is 7,500 rupees per night rooms and below. They will be actually increasing their price points by 5% because they will lose their input status, the ITC input. So I think more thoughts need to be given around what kind of GST reforms are to be given to startup founders. And when it comes to innovation, see, it's a very simple thing. In India, we spend close to 0.45% of our GDP to R&D. When you talk about Singapore, the Asian tigers, Taiwan, South Korea, we're talking about 6.5 to 7% of their GDP. I think until and unless R&D spends increase, both by corporations and by government, startup founders we are just 9 years old. If you talk about mainstreaming startups, 2016 is where Startup India was launched. So I think what Startup India has achieved by the able leadership of our Prime Minister is phenomenal. But the next leap of growth will come by more patient and a capital that is driven by innovation, R&D, and that is a very long haul of return appetite versus venture capital.
So there, Ritesh has a further wish list. I'm from what I can get a sense of. Archana, when you were talking about how tax breaks are always good, right? And we've seen corporate tax rates getting cut. We have a startup mission which is specifically focused on funding startups. Is there a sense now that, the funding winter is behind us and we have an ecosystem in place for startups to raise funds essential for growth?
Actually, we are very far away from startup winter being over. So if we just look at what led to startup winter, basically SoftBank, Tiger Global, Sequoia, I mean, these were the big boys in the Indian startup ecosystem who were writing the really large checks. They decided to exit the market for different reasons. SoftBank had its own internal reasons, so did Tiger, and to some extent Sequoia probably also had. But the truth is that sort of bunch of capital, risk capital, went away. Now, startups work only on risk capital, not on venture debt, unfortunately or fortunately. Now, to get risk capital, we are significantly undercapitalized in India because on the one hand, we see the number of VC firms being set up, but these are very small firms. These are 100 crore, AUM funds. Now, I mean, it's not rocket science to say that 100 crores can't feed 2 lakh startups, which is the DPIT number. So we are very, very woefully undercapitalized when it comes to risk capital. So bulk of the capital, domestic capital today, risk capital, sits at about in the 100 crore to 200 crore fund sizes. And that's not enough because you need the Series A, Series B, Series C for the ecosystem to be complete, so to speak. And the ecosystem, therefore, is not complete at this point as the way we see it. And that is not a good sign for our ecosystem. Now, the reason I talked about tax breaks is this is a high risk, sort of asset class. It's a new asset class. It requires people with some amount of capital that they can sort of forget about And it's also tenure based, so it's not something that you can exit in 3 years or 5 years because of the size of our market and our sort of GDP. So if you don't incentivize that capital, instead of going into real estate, to some extent real estate is, doesn't generate jobs, it doesn't generate technology. But we give tax breaks to the real estate sector, and I'm not going to be popular with the real estate guys, but it's the truth. There are other, sort of industries and sectors that get tax breaks. So if an investor is putting their money into a high-risk category where the capital can completely go down to zero, or of course if the company becomes a Zomato or whatever, then obviously everybody benefits, including the country, because you get wealth creation, you get taxpayers coming into the formal sector. What do we want to do and how do we want to think about tax breaks is, I think, an important part of reforms, and I like the word a lot. Because it'll help this ecosystem. And while I think under the able leadership of our Prime Minister, there's a lot of awareness about startups and startup investing. You'll be surprised by the number of people who still want returns in 2 years' time, and they want like a return that is going to beat the capital markets in 2 years. I'm like, did you build a business in 2 years? Like, which business can, right? So that you do need patient capital, and that is still not. We don't have endowments, we don't have a sovereign wealth fund, and in the absence of all that, we are really dependent on individuals to underwrite our startups and risk capital, which nowhere in the world has it happened that it's only going to be private individuals who will underwrite it. So we need a sovereign wealth fund. We need tax breaks. We need better repatriation of profits. If it is, that's an NRI who wants to invest in a VC fund. So there are certain things that needs to be aligned, because innovation happens when there is risk capital. The reason now investors look for, let's say, a food delivery or QCOM, because you can see there's some visibility of making money. You can't expect it. So this is not CSR, right? So this is not philanthropy money. So there has to be returns. So if you're going to do a long gestation investment, let's say a semiconductor, I mean, you're looking at least 20 years, at least. So which private investor will be willing to wait and still not get any tax breaks, pay capital gains? Like, if you're paying a full tax rate, like, what is the incentive? So that's a long answer to a short question.
No, but some very, very pertinent points that you have raised. And I think we have Anshoo also who's joined us. Anshoo, hi. Can we have you on stage, please? Yes, please. We believe you were stuck in traffic. I think ease of living in our cities is another topic that all of us can talk a lot about. Let me come to you, Ankit. We have been, we were chatting just a little while ago on expansion of PhysicsWallah and how you want to go into small towns and cities. How challenging is it for a company such as yours to be physically expanding into cities in terms of getting permissions and approvals? Do you feel that there has been a change? We've been talking about process reforms and ease of doing business and how a lot of regulations have been done away with. But has that made a difference in the way you run your business?
Great. Thank you so much, Shweta, for having me. The PhysicsWallah story. For the last 3 years, Shweta, we have been expanding our offline footprints. There has been a change. The government has made some very welcoming policies and schemes, but still I think it's a lot of work that needs to be done. Let me first start with infrastructure inspection. From the National Building Code, we have the norms, the guideline setups for schools, for colleges, but there is no such guideline setup for the coaching institute, right? So I think it's time where we have one central guidelines for the coaching institute, because these guidelines compliances vary from state to state. For some of the states, you need a coaching license. For some of the state, you don't. For some of the state, you need a trade license. For some of the states, you don't. Simple things like getting a fire safety compliance, right? It is important, mandatory, of course, right? And it's a non-negotiable thing, right? But if that can be streamlined through some sort of your online mode, it will definitely.
So how long does
improve.
it take for you to get a fire compliance certificate?
It takes months. It takes months.
Do you
right?
have a compliance department dedicated for this?
Yeah, we have a team dedicated just to ensure that each and every building infrastructure we have is fully compliant according to the norms. But I think a big portion of this, if streamlined through your online mode and not getting those state to state variation, can definitely improve the business. Secondly, the education zones. For example, Delhi alone, right? There is a lot of education migration that is there. There are so many students across India who comes to Delhi for their particular needs. Some come to Delhi for their preparation into a UPSC, some for one-day exam, railway, banking, NEET, JEE, etc. If you just see Delhi, it is so scattered. There is not even a single education zone, right? And cities like Delhi, Bangalore need those kind of a special education zones so that the basic compliances are already met.
Streamlined.
For example, the way we have industrial zones, the way we have IT zones, why not we also have education zones, right? I think these zones will definitely give more speed to the businesses like us.
Okay.
And they can expand better. So these are few of the changes which I would definitely suggest that are the things for the future.
Right. Anshu, you're in the online space. Is it easier there? And is that the reason why we've seen so much more entrepreneurial activity in the services sector vis-a-vis, physical manufacturing space?
I think doing anything in India is anything but easy. That anyone building a business here can tell you. And like to put it politely, people say that there's a lot of friction that you have to deal with. But before I go on that side, right, I'd say that, and I've been first an investor in the venture space and then an entrepreneur building companies in this ecosystem, that this is the best time that I've seen to be building. It's phenomenal how things have changed in the last decade and a half that at least I've been involved here. We have a thriving public market which is actually valuing companies which are making a loss and investing in the future, right? In the last few years, the tech companies that have come into the country and they've been so well received by our public markets, that's a very strong mandate from everyone, from the retail investor to the government to everyone else who's involved. The fact that the government has repeatedly done things to support the ecosystem, whether it is this 2.0 wave of reforms or in the past, UPI or EVs, where they've backed it with incentives to go and build. And we were the early participants in ONDC, which is another similar initiative. And I can see consistently a very forward and long-term view to say what's India going to be in 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 30 years from now. To start to invest in that now and do that in a very open way. Thus, I feel we are all very fortunate to be part of building this. Now, coming back to this point on friction, it is a very tough market. The disposable incomes are really low. If you take any of our numbers converted into dollars, food delivery, for example, that's a core part of what we do. It's like we'd have 300 rupees. You convert that into $3.5.
But it's not a fair comparison. Our per capita income is much lower.
Yeah.
It's in fact lowest amongst the developing world also.
Yeah.
So you cannot draw a comparison with the United States.
The point though is the expectation that the consumers have in India is no less, if not higher.
But why not? Consumers should get
right?
the best.
What does that mean? It means that as people who are building the businesses, we have to go the extra mile.
But we have high expectations if you want.
Absolutely.
Well,
Absolutely.
as we rightfully should.
Yes.
So I want to ask you about this whole H-1B visa, controversy that's happened. How do you see that playing out for all of you? Because Now you will probably have access to better talent, more talent. Are you all excited about it? What's the message that you want to, put out there? Because we're getting two sides to the story. We're getting professionals who are very unhappy about it, but then a lot of people in the government have said that this could be India's time to attract the right talent. Anshu, why don't we start with you?
Sure.
Yeah.
I think more than talent, India has so many people. It's fine if many of them go abroad and they are well-wishers of India. I don't think there's anything wrong in that. I think what that has done is that it sent a very strong message to India, which I saw the Prime Minister's message today around the need for Atmanirbharta, right? To not being dependent. I think that's a very strong message. That's what all of us should take to our heart and say that we are building now for our markets today, right? And we are fairly independent in doing that. But going deeper on that stack, right? Going to more fundamental layers of technology, moving away from application and then building it for India and the world, right? That should be what we should aspire to do over the next few decades.
Ankit, have you been talking to your friends, asking them to move back? Come join PhysicsWallah?
So in the last 24 hours, I have texted few of my friends कि अब तो वापस आ जाओ. Right? So yes. And it's a personal opinion. I think it's a blessing in disguise. It's the time. We should stay back. We should build the nation. Right? It's the need of the hour. It was there, but I think from now on, people will think more about being. That's my belief.
I think then yes, I think it, but unmet expectations. I think it won't harm us significantly, but then amongst the this is a import and of the economy, it's important to understand those and work towards aspirations. Then a winning gamble that work. But I think we should risk capital, create innovation as well. In a country the size, we need both kinds of companies. We need, of course, highly innovative tech companies, but we also need consumer and consumer tech companies. I mean, we have to feed ourselves, we have to eat, wear clothes.
No, absolutely.
And there's so many aspects of business, and we do lose when we give royalty to multinationals for their brand name, various things that is part and parcel of them servicing the Indian consumer. So, I mean, there's no good reason to do that, because our founders, and we've just released a report today which says that almost 70% of Indian consumers, and we looked at different cohorts, Gen Z, millennials, and so on, and they are very happy with Made in India now. So there's no barrier to Made in India from a quality or acceptance from the consumer. We just need much more risk capital for them to be able to scale up and, take care of some of the friction that I think this panel has talked a little bit about. And I think we can build very, very large companies in India. We are lucky to have a large, cohesive market. And we are lucky to have a large aspirational consumer in India, and we should absolutely cater to them.
Absolutely. Ritesh, your thoughts?
I think Bharat Bhagya Vidhata, I think what Donald Trump has handed to us is one of the biggest opportunities in the last century. We will see an ecosystem is built by capital, talent and infrastructure. We have decent capital, we have great infrastructure. The challenge is talent. We are seeing a lot of people moving out of India because of various reasons. I think once these people come back, we are going to see a lot of these deep tech companies thriving, and I'm personally very bullish about the idea of Bharat Bhagya Vidhata with a golden visa in Dubai is what we are going to see. 9 months people spending in India, 3 months in Dubai, especially.
But why Dubai, Ritesh?
Dubai
why Dubai?
What's that? I'll tell you. Example, I have a gold visa. I do not want to settle in Dubai, but during pollution months, I do not want my daughter to have lung cancer, God forbid. See, it will take a decade, so till that, hopefully. See, I told Bharat Bhagya Vidhata with a golden visa in Dubai.
No, that doesn't work, Ritesh.
No, yeah, you cannot have, you cannot have the cake and eat it too. Absolutely. So my next question is that can India aspire to be a country where India offers a golden visa, where people talk like this, that 7 months in America and 4
I agree
months,
with you, Shweta.
Right?
Yeah. We should be the first choice.
But I'll tell you something. I'm speaking to a lot of my Indian founder friends who are currently at Y Combinator, and they're actually scared. They don't want to even talk about coming back to India. My sister, my grandfather is ailing, and my sister who's in the US right now, and she's saying that I can't even hop on a plane right now. So the insecurity of leaving America is very high. Now they're literally being forced to come back to India, which they don't want to. But I think for Indians, this will be a great opportunity to get our talent back.
Okay, very quickly, let me get Anshoo in here. Anshoo, GST 2.0. And now we are looking at a next generation of reforms being implemented, being reloaded. One, what's your expectation of this new streamlined tax structure in terms of boosting consumption? And second, what would be on your wish list, one thing in the next generation reforms that the government is working on?
On the first generation, more than the substance and the numbers and the production price, I think the signal to say that the government is interested in boosting consumption in the country and will do all the right things, I think that itself is a big win. Building further in that direction, we spoke of this friction, right? The intent at the topmost level of the government, around through which all of these reforms roll out, to the last level of executive. Right? We all, as we are building the company, there are all of these issues around licenses, tax queries, all of these different...
tax queries are a really big issue. Yeah? GST or income tax, both.
As I said, right, I think the intent is very clear. By the time it comes all the way down, it's improved a lot, but a continuous way to make it more and more transparent. Almost everything's become online. So I think a bunch of these things, if I look back a decade versus now, they are great. I think that continued movement in that direction, which is starting with this 2.0 reforms, I think that would be just lovely and very supportive to the ecosystem.
Specific item on your wish list.
I gave you a couple, right? For example, tax either way, right? That continues to be something that there'd be a question on, and it can be interpreted in so many different ways, and then so much of time and money goes into that, right? That's a distraction from building the business. And that's one example. You could take that for the fire license also. It's all usually in the same way in which the executive finally gets caught.
Okay, Ankit?
So the next changes which the government has made are very welcoming, particularly for the automobile, for the healthcare. But I think from the educational industry point of view, there needs to be a better reform. Education is still taxed at 18%. There has been certain changes in the stationery goods, etc. From a PhysicsWallah lens point of view, I must say we teach in masses, we teach in those particular cities and towns where we are making education accessible, and that too is taxed at 18%.
Any states, according to you, which do a better job at...
Sorry?
Any states where you feel that the states have done a better job in easing compliances that you would like to mention or talk about?
See, there are variations from state to state, but I think Delhi is one where we need more better compliances, more particular coaching guidelines to be set up, right? It is always scattered, and it's such a big market, big opportunity for the entire industry. Right?
And any state or any city that has got this right, where it's easier for you to expand or set up more centers?
We are finding it a bit easy setting up centers in Maharashtra, right?
Okay.
But that can be one side of the story, but still that needs a lot of improvement, sure.
Interesting.
So I laid out my wish list at the beginning. I think some tax breaks for risk capital is extremely important. On the GST itself, I think, India has a great craft and craftsman sort of history, design. But if we start looking at luxury as something that needs to be overtaxed and look at sin goods, I think the government should have two slabs and leave it to the consumer to some extent, because, it's good to build in those, because if you look at European countries, you look at the US, you look at, almost every country, the first lady of that country will wear designers of that country. So you have to take pride in every sort of different sort of strata of where you can build businesses. And there is both prestige and, of course, there's capital to be made. So I think we should think a little bit about the aspirational middle class, because as they sort of go up the value chain, you don't want them to go with Ritesh to Dubai and shop there in all the in all the designer stores.
This is not going to be forgotten, huh?
So I think it's important that we understand the aspirations of our citizens.
Right.
So I think it's important to have two slabs, and I think that will simplify everything. And I
Sure.
think
So
I
get
echo-
rid of the sin goods tax.
and also the luxury.
Luxury.
Believe that 40% somehow, this is basically how then all bad practices start, because if there is pent-up demand in the market, there is pent-up demand.
Sure. Ritesh, very quickly, the Honorable Minister is right
Shweta,
here.
this is
So-
very interesting. I was speaking to one of the industrialists and he said that Ritesh, बाकी देशों में गरीब होना पाप होता है, India में अमीर होना मुश्किल होता है. And I asked him why, and the challenge is policy and laws are not clear. The biggest challenge is, I think the best thing that the government has done is in 2023 they got the Jan Vishwas Act, wherein they decriminalized 42 petty acts.
Right.
I think in India bankruptcy is very important because you will be amazed. India के अंदर
Very quickly, one quick suggestion, because we have the Minister
इंडिया
right
के
here.
अंदर कंपनी बनाना आसान है, बंद करने में 3 साल लगते हैं, शादी करना आसान है, बाहर निकलने में 10 साल लग जाते हैं. So I think बाहर exiting is extremely important.
All right. On that note, we'll have to close this conversation, but lots of valuable insights. Thank you very much to all our panelists. And can we get a big round of applause, please?